Welcome to the monthly vinyl voyage. In September 2022, I started an experiment, building myself a new music collection from scratch, at a rate of no more than one album a month. 2 years later, it's formed 24 great albums, and I'm taking a bit of time to look at each of those purchases, to learn more about them, and to reflect on what they mean to me, and also to digress onto side notes that I find interesting. Thanks for joining me today. This is my record of the month from November 2024. It's album number 26 in my music collection, and it's the self-titled debut album by Jake Bugg. I ordered this for myself in November 2024, but it took so long to arrive that when it did, I put it aside until Christmas, and my dad actually gifted it to me. This album was first released on October 15th, 2012, and it reached number 1 on the UK album chart just 6 days later. Despite its initial chart success, selling 600,000 copies, I don't know how common this would be in people's music collections today, but it has a place in mine. October 2010. Nearly 1 AM on a misty October night in Nottingham. There are occasional fireworks being set off, inconsiderately well ahead of bonfire night. Dean Jackson is putting off sleep, preparing for his BBC Nottingham radio show, when his laptop pinged with an email. From the BBC introducing website, the message announced the musician named Jake Bugg had uploaded a track titled "Love Me the Way You Do." Intrigued by a fellow night owl, Dean clicked play and was immediately captivated by a vulnerable yet determined voice singing, "Trying to find a way to Kingston Town, trying to find any way out." The short attached biography listed Jake as only 16, which seemed unbelievable given the maturity and emotional depth in his voice. Here is a 16-year-old lad who sings and expresses emotions like a pro. Dean is not just impressed. It immediately feels like they've known each other for a long time. At daybreak, Dean reaches out to Jake and receives a swift reply. Jake is only 16, and he'd like to send a few more songs and get Dean's feedback on them. The BBC Radio Nottingham studios are only a short bus ride away from the Clifton estate where Jake lives. The conversation evolves through Jake offering to physically bring in copies of his songs, to him bringing his guitar to play some unrecorded songs, to perhaps even recording them to play on air. And in early December 2010, Jake arrives at the BBC for the first time. The recording session starts. "My name's Jake Bugg, and this song's called Saffron." 3 lines into the song, an air of calm descends on the studio. The small audience was enchanted and stunned. There's no need for a second take. 2 more tracks follow, proving that Saffron was no fluke. If Saffron had a country sensibility, Something Wrong shows more of a folk side. Love Me the Way You Do was an unabashed love song. With every moment that passed, there's a growing sense that something indefinable is brewing in the studio that December night. The word was spreading, and BBC colleagues were listening in on speakers around the building and coming to gaze at the young musician through the studio's soundproof glass. On the Saturday night the session aired, and the video went live on YouTube. There were calls during the show from impressed and moved listeners. By the middle of the following week, sure enough, the industry was getting into overdrive. One record company executive called to tell Dean that his PA was literally moved to tears by the session and the interview. She was not alone. Jake Bugg was well and truly out there. BBC Introducing, impressed with Jake's session and his rising profile, booked him to play at their stage at Glastonbury just a few months off in June 2011. Management, publishing and record deals followed, and then 18 months of writing and recording sessions. Listening to this album takes me straight back to the summer of 2012 and puts a huge, stupid grin across my face, because I have fabulous memories of 2012. I spent 7 years at the University of Nottingham and became part of a fabulous group of friends there. And then in 2006, I moved back to Cambridge and started the next part of my life. Over the next 4 years, Carly and I started our careers. We bought a house, got engaged and then married. But over that time, we stayed really close with my friends, meeting up and travelling with them, celebrating their engagements and their weddings and their housewarmings. And then in 2011, I became a father, and my son Henry became the genuinely joyous centre of my sleep-deprived universe. Becoming a parent was clearly going to change everything in my life, and I knew that we weren't going to be one of those couples who just continue to do everything that we'd done before, but carrying a baby. But I quietly hoped we could still do at least some of what we'd done before, especially keeping in touch with my friends. But this would partly be down to them. How much would a baby cramp our style? Our friends didn't disappoint. In August 2011, we moved to a new house, and they all turned out for a combined housewarming and garden taming party, despite us being terrible and distracted hosts. By the start of 2012, we'd begun to find our feet as parents, and we were becoming able to do more than just make it through the day. In March 2012, we, including toddler Henry, were invited to join a group going to the Lake District. And I'm still genuinely touched that we were welcome there. This group of young couples were willing to have a potentially screaming baby and all of the stinky hassle that comes with it join them on their holiday. And it turns out that was just the start of the new adventures. In June, we got a mysteriously vague invite to a stag/hen celebration on the Pembroke coast. And once again, Henry was invited, still the only kid to join this group of adults. Our surprise accommodation turned out to be the fabulous St Anne's Head Lighthouse, with its panoramic ocean views from the observation deck. And as an unexpected bonus, on June the 4th, 2012, whilst we were there, the UK celebrated the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, marking 60 years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign. As part of that celebration, more than 4,000 beacons were lit all across the UK and around the world. This included the beacon lighting at the new lighthouse just down the head, which we tagged along to watch, followed by another bonus, a quick tour of the new lighthouse, which was genuinely awesome. The weather was great and we took long walks and played cricket on the beach. It was just great memories. Another big event in 2012 was London hosting the Olympics and doing a surprisingly competent job. Our customary British cynicism and reserve could have led to a kind of half-hearted effort, but the event turned out to be an impressive celebration, a logistical triumph, overwhelmingly positive, enthusiastic and engaging. Ahead of the games themselves, the Olympic Torch Parade came through Cambridgeshire on July the 8th, 2012, and we took Henry to watch the torch and the parade pass by. In the ticket ballot, we were allocated tickets to go and watch the Olympic fencing. Carly and I travelled down to Stratford to be a part of it, which was also a great experience. In August of 2012, I went to the Why Not Music Festival, held at Pike Hall in the Peak District. I'm not a music festival regular, although I've now been to a few over the years. This was another very civilised stag do event, and it was an excellent choice of activity for us. There was camping, the live music, great beer, a cheese tent and fabulous weather. No Carly and Henry this time, but it was great to be able to spend time with my friends. And on August 3rd, 5 p.m. on the Big Gin stage, we watched Jake Bugg perform live. Now, he was just one of dozens of emerging artists we saw that weekend, and his name wasn't even on the festival poster. If you notice, Bastille and Lucy Rose are there in small writing, but he didn't even feature. But his set on the 3rd was more than good. He did 6 songs, including Troubletown, Country Song, and closing with Lightning Bolt. When we got home from the festival, I pre-ordered his CD, on the 6th of August, scheduled for delivery after its release. Through the rest of the summer, we met up more times and continued to celebrate with Stu and Rose's wedding in August and then Ali and Helen's wedding in September, which brings us up to October and the release of this album. A week before his album's release, Jake returned to the BBC Radio Nottingham studio with Dean to record a few extra tracks and reflect on his journey so far. The label was already buzzing about sales figures, but Dean's modest hope was that this simple, raw, heartfelt debut would at least crack the top 40, a solid achievement for a young musician from Nottingham. At the same time, industry heavyweights were setting the stage for a chart showdown, as Leona Lewis, fresh from previous chart-topping successes, dropped her third album. In a last-ditch move to secure her position, physical copies of her album were beginning to appear at the end of supermarket aisles and at around checkouts. Whilst the prevailing expectation was for a safe top 40 finish, Dean couldn't help but wonder if Jake's genuine, soulful artistry might quietly defy the odds, proving that authentic guitar-driven music still had a place in a pop-dominated market. The album was instantly well received and loved by critics and fans alike. Through the LP's 14 songs, 7 of which were released as singles, Jake tells the story of a young boy disillusioned with his hometown, his family life and relationships. It's probably reaching to describe the album as a soundtrack for a generation, but for a lot of teens in the 2010s, I think that there is more relatability in this than in most of the other music being released at the time. The album is earthy and filled with real stories, capturing a range of themes from youthful love and struggle to introspective reflections. It features dark moments like Seen It All, which delves into the more sombre aspects of life, while tracks like Slide, Broken and Simple as This offer pure, unadulterated beauty with their evocative melodies and heartfelt lyrics. To celebrate the 10th anniversary of the album, Jake has re-released and remastered his debut album, featuring new demos and unreleased songs which were scrapped from the original tracklist. The album was fully remastered at Abbey Road Studios by Frank Arkwright, a highly respected mastering engineer known for his expertise in both mastering current releases and remastering classic albums. Hi-Fi Choice described Frank as England's greatest mastering and remastering engineer for contemporary rock music, which is something. I got this particular pressing, which is the limited edition gold vinyl from Rough Trade. My son thought this was a Justin Bieber album, which made me laugh, but I can see it. And when I started researching that, I learned that not only is there only 1 day's difference in age between Justin Bieber and Jake Bugg, but the Irish Examiner said Jake Bugg is the Justin Bieber of British rock. So there you have it. With its release late in 2012, this album was an early inclusion for the 2013 award season. At the 2013 Brit Awards, it was nominated for British Breakthrough Act, highlighting Jake's impact on the music scene. He was nominated for both Best Solo Artist and Best Album at the NME Awards. In the Czech Republic, the Zbrich Music Awards also acknowledged him, nominating him for Best International Discovery. His songwriting skills were celebrated at the Novello Awards, with a nomination for Best Song Musically and Lyrically for Two Fingers, a song in which Jake directly references his love-hate relationship with his hometown and his feelings of escape that resonate within him. The Q Awards nominated Jake for Best Solo Artist, where he also won the award for Best New Act. The biggest nod for his debut album was that it was nominated for a prestigious Mercury Prize for Album of the Year, up against David Bowie and the Arctic Monkeys. So what's to love? Jake Bugg's debut feels unfiltered, capturing the rawness of youth, working class struggle and small town life. His lyrics paint vivid pictures of real experiences without overproduction or polish. His album blends 60s folk skiffle with Britpop energy, drawing from Bob Dylan, the Beatles and Oasis, yet it never feels like pure imitation. At just 39 minutes, every track has a purpose. There's no filler, whether it's the anthemic lightning bolt or the introspective Someone Told Me. And at just 18, Bugg's lyrics can carry the weight of someone far older. Songs like Two Fingers and Broken show a depth that's rare in a debut album. The distinctive sound on Troubletown, which is one of my favourite tracks, was a lucky recording accident where a microphone was left on. Jake wanted to re-record the track, but the producers liked the effect. Jake Bugg's debut album was unpolished and raw and full of character. His second album, Shangri-La, felt like the opposite. Glossy, overproduced, and lacking that authenticity that made his first record so compelling. Recorded in Rick Rubin's famous Malibu studio with an all-star cast including Chad Smith of the Chili Peppers and Matt Sweeney, it had all the makings of a big, career-defining step forward. But instead it feels like a misstep, stripping away the scrappy, streetwise charm of his early work and replacing it with something that sounds more like a studio experiment rather than a natural evolution. The one shining exception is Simple Pleasures. This is where the more expansive production actually works in his favour. The track broods and builds with hypnotic guitar lines and a creeping intensity that feels genuinely gripping. It's the rare moment where Shangri-La's polished approach enhances rather than flattens his sound. And then there's the Royal Albert Hall live version. Proof that Simple Pleasure was not just about production tricks. In a live setting, it's rawer, edgier, and filled with an urgency missing from most of Shangri-La. It's a reminder of what Jake Bugg does best, keeping it real, keeping it stripped back, and letting the song speak for itself. The CD 10th Anniversary Deluxe Edition includes the recording of Simple Pleasures from the 2014 concert at the Royal Albert Hall. That was my personal bonus track that I would like added to this vinyl pressing. The album is a captivating debut from a British teenager, blending vintage soul with a fresh modern edge. It probably doesn't rank among some of the greats in my collection, but it's a nostalgic part of my past, reminding me of the good times in 2012 and my time in Nottingham before that. It may be more of a niche album, but I think its authenticity and emotional depth make it worthy of recognition and its place in my collection. I hope you take the time to listen to it again. I'm sure I've made mistakes in my research and my presentation. We're only human. But thank you for listening.